Hello, it's Caveman again, and we're going to talk a little bit about slot car controllers, the transformers that can drive your slot cars, the ratings, and what that kind of means in most cases. I'm not a super expert, but I can lead you in the right direction. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. My mistake. But most of this stuff will be right on. Anyway, a lot of people that can buy the Arton cars, let's face it, they're much more expensive or less expensive than Carrera or SCX cars, and there's lots of reasons for that, but the bottom line is Arton is the least expensive car that you can buy out there 9 times out of 10. Now the controller though is got a turbo button on it. Now the turbo button has caused everyone just a little bit of problems, okay, simply because with that turbo button, okay, also comes a lack of full control with the controller itself. We're going to get back to that, and I can explain it a little bit more. But bottom line is usable. In other words, when you pull your trigger from 0 to full blast with the trigger anyway, it's only pushing 45 ohms. If you go to the end of the winding, it's 60 ohms, but the controller never touches that. The bar does not slide up to it any further, so it just stops at 45 ohms. So a base rating is 45 ohms, but when you push the turbo, it actually connects it directly, so you get full transformer voltage all at once. And that's why those cars, any car that you got on there, pretty much it just takes right off. Anyway, Carrera and SCX is basically the same. I do not have a Carrera controller right now. Maybe next time I'll have one, I can open it up and show you the differences. Alright, now even though this is for HO series, okay, this is a lifelike controller for an HO track, much smaller car of course, and the bottom line is this is 40 ohms. Alright, now this here particular controller could easily be replaced with this one here, but the same thing would happen. In other words, if you just wired them together into this one here, cut it off and wired this one on there, what you would have is 45 ohms, and then when you push the turbo button it would take off like a banshee and you might not be able to control it at all. That's what a lot of people and tell me happens when they put an Arton car and they're trying to control it with their SCX or Carrera controller. Until they hit the turbo button, the car's not moving that much. When they do hit the turbo button, it takes off like a bat out of hell and they can't control it. Anyway, but that's why. Alright, now Arton controllers, this is a newer model, if you will. There are 15 ohms, alright, and that 15 ohms gives you a pretty good variance as far as that goes for driving the Arton cars. It's designed for the Arton cars, the Arton car track, but basically that controller connected to the same track as an SCX or a Carrera will work. The only difference is with only 15 ohms it makes the controller a little bit more touchier. Doesn't mean that it doesn't work, it just, you know, kind of like I explained before, if you take and change an engine in a car and you make it slower or faster, okay, bottom line is it's going to perform a little bit different. In this case, this one's going to react faster than the one that is, say for instance, 45 or 60 ohms, okay? But this Arton controller also could switch over and it could take and sub for an HO controller. Now, there's a big difference there, and once again, the biggest difference you're going to notice is when you're taking and trying to make these cars on your HO track go nice and slow, if that's what you wanted to take and do, you would just have to be a little bit more careful with this controller to make that happen. Also, we have the more of a vintage. Okay, I found that and popped it open, and that's 10.5 volts, okay? Not a big difference between 10.5 and 15 really, but that's what Arton has been sticking with. So, you know, basically these are both 1/43 controllers. Now, Arton also has a 1/32 track and controllers, of course, that go with it. And opening them up and all, I found that it's 60 ohms, okay? So now that same exact controller is the same ohms when it comes right down to it as the SCX and Carrera, okay, without the turbo button. Now, once again, that turbo button makes a difference for people buying Arton cars and putting them on their SCX tracks and their Carrera tracks. It's not a question, it just will give you a problem until that's rectified. We'll again go to something and I'll show you a little bit closer what you can try to take and do, but it won't make that much difference with your controller. Transformers, okay? Carrera is basically 14.8 volts, the ones that I found, and most of them are 700 milliamps. I am sure that there's more than one amperage rating for these transformers and such, but that's what I found in research as far as it goes. Doesn't mean it's the only ones. Now, lifelike, okay, is, you know, a transformer, again, for HO cars, all right, and forget the controller strength as far as the ohms and such. Just continue looking at this here. Now, it's rated at 17 volts, okay. When I measured it, it was 16.1. That was the real voltage. Now, one thing I want you to note is it's a 6 amp transformer. Now, what does that mean? Basically, it means you have a little less variance as far as when your car is running around the track and one person slides off the track for some reason, wrecks or whatever, or stops their car, the other car takes off a little bit faster, okay? Now, most of the times, these transformers are rated for their own tracks, and that's how they take and figure it out. So on the most part, that 6 amps will take and cover most anybody as far as, you know, taking and running down the track with an HO series car and taking and, you know, racing back and forth and not really having that much of a problem. But when you go to 1/43rd scale, and you may have noticed it with your own cars, 700 milliamps is what they're saying is enough, but it's not a lot. And that's not dogging the company at all, but it's pushing it. So let's just say, for instance, both cars are, you know, full throttle, not turbocharged or anything, full throttle, both of them are running, both of them are pulling voltage and amperage away from that transformer. When one of the cars stops, the other car will speed up. Now, what's that mean in, you know, all the dirty down racing? You know, if you're real serious and you want to win and you're going around a corner, the other guy wrecks, and all of a sudden in that corner your car picks up, you know, a little bit more voltage, and it just zips around the corner and you wreck. You know, it comes flying off the track. If the amperage was higher, it would do that less or not at all, okay? So that does make a difference. So bottom line is you could take this transformer, right, from the lifelike and connect it to an SCX series. Now, there's a difference in voltage, and that's higher than what their, you know, the rating is calling for it, and that's probably pushing the Carrera and the SCX just a little bit more than it needs to be pushed. I'm not saying it couldn't run, it could, but it's not recommended, and, you know, I'm not going to tell you, hey, you need to do this or that. And some people will say, oh, it might void my warranty. Yeah, if you do anything different to your slot car tracks, it's maybe void your warranty. They may even take and say, if you don't run our cars on it, it'll void the warranty. But I know the 132nd tracks, 124 tracks, and a lot of the 143rds, on the most part, don't say that, but there's probably some fine print somewhere that says something to do with that, you know. But they are just slot car tracks. The warranty drops, and you're welcome to take and do what you like with it. It's yours. Now, as far as, whoops, one more over. As far as 132nd cars, as far as the Arton cars, all right, the standard transformer, okay, is rated at 12 volts. The real voltage out of it was 14, and the amperage coming out of that transformer is only 4 amps. Now, that gives 2 amps per car. That's quite a bit. You shouldn't have any real problems with that, and you can run any of the cars, the Carrera, just about basically any of the cars. Now, that gives you 2 amps to play with each car. When you're taking a look at the Arton, all right, it's rated at 6 volts. When I measured the voltage, it came up to 9.2. Now, some of them will say 7.2, but they also read 9.2. All right. Now, I've seen some that are 800 milliamps, which is basically the same as the SCX and Carreras, but the 1.2 amperage transformer will take and do you better. It's still not really, if you want perfection, it's not going to be where you want it. If you can get 2 amps on a 143rd track, you're doing great. It will take and give you much better control in each lane. That's to each their own. It doesn't really matter. It's just information to know. Now, this here, okay, I'm going to take and show you this because I've used them before and they work excellent. All right, that is a train transformer. This particular one just happens to be a lifelike transformer. Okay, you know, on the control itself, it has the dots, if you want to call it that. They're not marked in voltage, but when I measured the voltage, if you went up to the first one, it was 3.6, 7 volts, 10 volts, 13, and up to 15.2. The great thing about this is 2 things. That particular transformer, inexpensive transformer, 7 amps. More than enough power for your SCX track, your Carrera track, your HO track, as far as you could take and actually run your HO slot cars on it, and definitely the Arton cars. Now, And that would take care of business with every single one of these tracks we're talking about. Why? Because it's adjustable. Now, you know, if you were running and you had a 6-volt track that uses batteries, you could put it right on the 7-volt mark, which is basically the second notch over, and run those cars, right? Well, let's just say, you know, you have some little kids that are learning, you can maybe bring it down in between those two dots. And what does that mean? They can pull the throttle all the way down the button, and they're not necessarily going to run off the track, and you can base it that way. So a 2-year-old can take and grab it, pull the button, and watch the car go around, and they're not going to wreck. It's just going to keep going, no matter how far they pull it down. And that is great for learning on, okay? So it's a variable transformer, all right? But the bottom line is it's 7 amps. Anyone that messes with them, okay, you know, a lot of times 1/32, 1/24, they push 10, 20 amps. I've seen them take and actually use car batteries, connect them to their tracks up under the big professional tracks. Of course, that's all changed now, but they basically have used that, and it works extremely well, because you know what? One car is not going to take voltage away from the other one, hands down. It's just not going to happen. So, of course, it's usable for a train too, and that's what it's all about. If you go the other direction with the controller, turning it to the left, basically the same voltage will pop up. The only difference is, for a slot car, it's going to change the direction that it's going. The only downside might be the old-fashioned lap counters, where it actually expects you to go a certain direction. Now, one other thing about train transformers, okay, you'll notice as a DC, what you'll say train track or track, right? And then it has an AC outlet. AC, not like house current, you're going to get shocked. It's approximately, I think it's around 14 volts or so, and that's designed for trains, for lighting up little buildings and all that. Now, if you hook that up to the AC for your different slot cars and stuff, it's pretty much not going to take and push the cars down the track. It's AC, it's not direct current. So just to know that, if you do take and get one of these transformers, bottom line is you know, it will take and say, you know, on this side here, track and accessories. Okay, some of them have a sticker over it like that one. That particular transformer is brand new. I just have it set out. But again, not trying to talk it to death, but this one transformer will replace every single transformer that we have seen here. And, you know, call it what you want. Now, is it the exact fit? Is it one size fits all? Pretty much one size fits all, but you have to take and be the one to adjust it. If you let your 5-year-old take and adjust it, and he puts it at 15.2 volts, and you're running a 6-volt track, and your car's got headlights, and it pops the bulbs on it, well, that's why it's going to pop the bulbs. The car may take and scream down the track, but, you know, the bulbs are going to take a hitting. So, anyway, enough about that. But anyone that's looking to upgrade their track to a heavier transformer, that's the least expensive that I found to take and do. Now, you can take that same transformer and say, for instance, I'm going to plop this thing down here. This is an Arton, you know, plug for an Arton track, and inside the bubble wrap is a transformer, a new one. And that wire that comes out of there, if I took and just cut it right here, all right, just cut it off and ran it over here and hooked it one to each as far as to the transformer, okay, and this here plug would just plug directly into my track. Done. I would take and adjust it by turning the knob, and, you know, bingo, I'm running. Okay, again, you have to take and know the voltages. Okay, those voltages that I wrote down are fairly accurate and probably be very close for every single one that you pick up that way. But there are other transformers, train transformers, that do not have tick marks. A lot of them have a slide bar, and because I don't have them all in front of me, you would have to take and check yours to find out what the voltage is at certain points. That way, you know what you're putting into your track. Okay, so that takes care of transformers and controllers. Now, for the moment, I'm going to go back to this SCX controller and try to take and point out exactly what's happening with the SCX and for the Carrera. All right, that's all the way down, and this here little bar right here is your resistor bar. Some people will call it a varistor. In other words, and it's variable. In other words, as that controller is pushed, it goes up and it slides back and forth. When it's all the way down, it gives no voltage. As soon as you start going up, it runs against this here, and this is wrapped with wire. It's a little bit hard to see in this video, but it's wrapped with wire and goes all the way up to the other end. Now, this one here is a SCX, so when I push it all the way down, you can see that this piece right here is not going to the end. It stops. It's that simple. It just doesn't go all the way up. Now, the other controllers, every one of the ones that I've shown you are full function controllers. The only difference is this same bar will go all the way up and touch until it hits this up here. Now, what does that do? That doesn't let you get all the voltage that you need or want, okay? Now, when you push the turbo button, it's kind of hard to see that metal going down, but it does a direct short all the way across, giving the track 100% voltage directly from whatever transformer is connected to it. So that's why you can't really race using the turbo button except for to make it go a little fast and then let off. So, you know, I wondered, and I looked, and the only thing I can see, and it's real hard to take and see this here little notch, but I'm going to try to take and point to it here. But right here, see if I can find it again. Oh, it's barely sticking up. You'll look for it right here, and when I move the trigger, you'll be able to see it, but you can kind of see it. And what happens is the red button, when you're pushing it, that's what it hits right there. It hits. Okay. Now, if you take and cut that button off, this will go up a little bit further, but what you'll notice, at least on this controller, it has a secondary bar on the bottom, okay? And that just, when it goes up here, it hits this piece right here and also stops. So this one's set up, even though you take and cut this, you're not going to get that much more movement out of it. And also because of the distance, you can see that if it kept going and tried to go to the very top, this would basically slide all the way over. So I don't know if I would take and, you know, mess with that there peg, because at least the SCX, not sure about the Carrera, if you change that, you may have to take this here, you would have to do some modifications, take this here screw out, move this down to where you had full control. In other words, it would take and go and touch the whole thing. And you got some room to take and do that, but you would have to modify it quite a bit. If you knew what you was doing, you might be able to work it out and not take and replace your controller at all. Anyway, that's when I say that there's problems with using the controllers for Arton cars. Your track's fine, your controller's fine. It's just the setup inside the controller that creates a problem for Arton cars. Anyway, enough about that. I've talked it to death. Also, we're going to take and just go briefly through the cars. We're going to just start out simply with the 132nd Arton car. Okay. The body, of course, is right there. I've just taken these off to take and speed things up. Now, the underneath is pretty much flat like a lot of the 132nd cars. It's got the magnet here. The brushes, braids, some people will call them pickups. All means basically the same thing. The Arton motor itself, okay, and then your pinion and crown gear. Now, this here, as far as taking and changing your brushes, you just unplug them right there and pop this out. It just got two clips that just let it come out. You can replace it pretty easy. The Arton 143rd car, now what you'll take a notice, much smaller of course, and everything is just, you know, kind of condensed, but even though it's just a 143rd car, little framework and stuff and the motor is a little bit heavier duty as far as it goes. They're stronger. There's no flex to the car at all. It's more like a resin frame, and it's, you know, not brittle, but it will break. It will not bend. So that's why it takes all the wall pounding that they get and flying around on the floor and hitting furniture and such, and usually come up unscathed, no problems whatsoever. The SCX, very similar to the Carrera in 143rd scale. Now, one thing I'm going to take and do is just compare the size of the motors here. You can see there's a big difference in the size of the motor, all right? In this case, the wheelbase is about the same, right? And if you put this car on top of it, of course, it would cover up pretty much all the wheelbase, so they're about the same size. It's just the way the car looks and how it mounts. Now, these here, when you flip them over, and I've taken it off just to take and show you, right here is where your brads will take and go, okay? So let's just say this is the replacement, you got it, and you're going to take and replace it. Basically, you just take and put it to the hole, and one-handed here, and just push it in, and voila, it's done, okay? One nice thing about those there, it allows the car to take and drift a little bit more than some of the, like Arton cars or a spin track. And the reason being is because even though the car is sliding sideways, this flat pin is helping that thing stay into the groove of the track. It can still slide off, but it does take and help it drift a little bit better.